Hello students, welcome to your second video in Unit 3. This video is about the midpoint formula. So we're starting out similarly to how we started out the distance formula. We're going to find the midpoint of horizontal and vertical lines. So step 1 for all 4 of these problems is to plot the point. So let's plot point A at 7, 1. Remember that's an x value of 7 and a y value of 1. And point B at -3, 1, an x value of -3, a y value of 1. So now we're not trying to find the distance between the 2 points, we're trying to find the midpoint, which is the middle point, the point right in the middle. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to count each direction, okay? I'm just going to jump in one block each direction. So left 1, right 1, left 2, right 2, left 3, right 3, left 4, right 4, left 5, right 5. That puts me right in the very middle between A and B at the point 2, 1. So the midpoint, the middle point between A and B is at 2, 1. I'm going to pause the video and I want you to try the next 3 examples. Okay, I've started example 2, but I've come to a place where you may be confused. I plotted point C and D and I began counting in each direction. And then I got to a spot where I couldn't count anymore. I counted 3 from the left and 3 from the right, and now I have an odd number of blocks. So don't get worried. All you have to do is count half a block now to get to the midpoint. And this will be the point -3 1/2 up 3. So don't be afraid of half pieces here. Example 3 worked out very nicely. I plotted point E, I plotted point F, started counting in, and I got to the point -5, 2. Final example. For this final example, again, don't be worried if you come up with a decimal answer. It's very probable. Here I've counted up 2 and down 2, and now I need to make a half jump to get to the middle. So the midpoint is at 7, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. So the easiest way to find the midpoint between 2 points when the lines are horizontal or vertical is to count. Don't make it any harder than it needs to be. Let's flip over. Okay, what to do if the 2 points are diagonal from each other and counting is a lot harder? Well, we're going to start this process a lot like we started the distance formula. Step 1, plot the points. So J is at -6, -4. K is at -4, +1. Please forgive the pen bleeding through from the other side. Now step 2, just like our previous lesson on distance, we're going to make a right triangle. So extend and create a right triangle. Now again, we are looking for a point, a midpoint on the diagonal line. So there's no counting when lines are diagonal. Okay? What I want you to do instead is I want you to count out the horizontal and vertical distances, just like with distance formula. Count horizontal and vertical distances. So horizontal, that's a distance of 2. Vertical, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finally, all you need to do is cut those distances in half and then count out the midpoint. Cut distances in half, and then count. Okay, so very simple. If we take 2, our horizontal distance, and divide by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So now I'm going to count a horizontal distance of 1 and a vertical distance of 2.5. So starting at J, go right 1 and up 2.5 to find the midpoint. This is the point, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down 1.5. I like this method because it's very visual and it uses a lot of the same steps that the distance formula uses. Try on your own down here with points L and M. Okay, I've plotted my points. I drew in my right triangle. I counted the horizontal and vertical distance, and I split them both in half. Horizontal distance of 2 divided by 2 is 1. Vertical distance of 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. So that's what I need to count. I'm going to start at M, go horizontal 1, vertical of 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So the midpoint is at 1, 2, 3, and up 1, 2, 3.5. Okay, option 2 uses something called the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula. The midpoint formula, we're going to use a visual again. So we're going to start by plotting points. Always plotting points so we can see what we're working on. So this is again the same example problem as we've already done. So -6, -4 is J, -4, +1 is K. I'm trying to find a midway point between J and K. So step 2 is use the distance formula. Use the midpoint formula. Okay, so jot this down very carefully so you're not missing anything. Midpoint formula is a point, so we're going to have our parentheses and our comma between. And to get the x value, you add the two x's together, x1 and x2, and divide by 2. And to get the y value, you add the two y's together and divide by 2. So truly, this is an average of the x's and an average of the y's. Okay, so let's see what that might look like here. x1, I'm going to call from point J, is -6. x2 from point K is -4, divided by 2, comma, because this is an x value, these are y values, y1 is -4, and y2 is 1, divided by 2. So I've got my x's on the left, my y's on the right. Now it's all about order of operations. Let's start in the numerators. -6 plus -4 is -10. -4 plus 1 is -3. -10 divided by 2 is -5. -3 divided by 2 is -1.5. So our midpoint is at -5, -1.5. Exactly midway between J and K. A visual is so important because if we got a point way over here, maybe we got a negative wrong somewhere and we got +5, -1.5, you would know that that's outrageous. So definitely draw yourself a little grid and use a graph to double check your answers. Let's go down here and try this method for L and M. Okay, students, here I'm showing you my work. I use my midpoint formula. I plugged in my points, did a little bit of algebra and arithmetic, got 6 over 2 and 7 over 2, which reduces to 3 and 3.5, which are the same points we got the first time around. So this is a great way to check your work to make sure you get the same answer with both methods. What I want you to do next is this last example. You can pick whichever method you like better and go with that, or you can try both methods to confirm your answer. All right, everybody, here I'm showing my work both ways. I plotted my points, counted horizontal distance of 15 and vertical distance of 5. If we take 15 and cut it in half, that's 7.5. And if we cut 5.5, that's 2.5. So I've got a horizontal distance of 7.5 and a vertical distance of 2.5. So I started over here at N, counted right 7.5. And then I counted up 2.5, and that landed at 1/2 from the origin and down 1.5. It landed right here at this pink point. That is the point, 1/2 and negative 1.5. The other way, you guys, is to take the points and plug them into the midpoint formula, seen here, and then do the arithmetic. And I still got 1/2 and negative 1.5. Flip the page one more time and we have one more set of problems to try. Okay, in this last set of problems, we're switching it up a little bit. This time we're being given the midpoint and our goal is to find the missing endpoint. We have to find the missing endpoint this time. So as usual, I have 2 options for you that you can go with. Okay, option 1. Option 1 is very visual again. Step 1, of course, plot points. Now this time, I'm plotting an endpoint and a midpoint. Point J is the endpoint at -7, -6, and point K is the midpoint at -4, -2. Next, make a right triangle again. This is a repeated pattern, so hopefully it's easy to remember what to do. Again, count your horizontal and vertical distances. Horizontal, I go 3 to the right and up 4. Now step 4 is to find the midpoint. We want to count the same amount from the midpoint. Count the same horizontal and vertical distance from the midpoint. So I went 3 right and 4 up to get to the K. So I need to go 3 right and 4 up again, and it'll get me to my other endpoint. My final endpoint is at -1, +2. Try it down here with this first example, L and M. Pause to check your work. Okay, I've already gone ahead and plotted the endpoint at L and the midpoint at M. I'm trying to find the other endpoint. My vertical distance is 2, my vertical distance is 9, and my horizontal distance is 2. So if M is the midpoint, I need to start here and count that same amount. So I need to go down 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm off my page a little bit. And to the right 2, 1, 2. This will be the location of the final endpoint. This is the point from the origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the final endpoint is at 6, negative 10. The next option is a much more algebraic option, not quite as visual. Step 1, of course, plot your points. And so let's start there. J is at negative 7, negative 6. K is at negative 4, negative 2. Step 2 is to make two miniature equations by plugging in what you have using the midpoint formula. So let me show you what that means. Make two mini equations. So we know that the midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. These are the values of the x, and these are the values of the y. So really, we've got two separate equations here. And I'm going to set up two miniature equations with this information plugged. So here's equation number 1. I know that the x value of the midpoint is negative 4. I know that one of the endpoints is negative 7. And I am trying to solve for the second x value. So this is my first miniature equation for the x's. My second miniature equation is going to be all about the y's. I know that the midpoint value is negative 2. I know that one of the endpoint values is negative 6. And I'm trying to find the second endpoint value. So here my two miniature equations have the midpoint on the left side of the equation and the first endpoint on the right side of the equation. And I'm going to use my algebraic skills, step 3, I'm going to use my algebraic skills to solve for x or y. Well, algebraically, I want to get x by itself. So first thing to do for both of these equations is to multiply by 2. That gets rid of the 2 in the denominator. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And my final step is to move over this negative 7, so I need to add 7 to both sides. 7 plus negative 8 is negative 1. So my x value is going to be negative 1. Let's do it again for the y value. Step 1 is to multiply by 2 to get rid of the fraction. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And now I need to move over this negative 6, so I'm going to add it. 6 plus negative 4 is 2, so my y value is 2. Okay, I want you to try example 1 below, practice problem 1, using this method. First, let's check out my algebraic setup. I've set up two miniature equations. The midpoint is the 4 and the negative 1. So each miniature equation is set equal to the midpoint. The endpoint is 2, 8. And that is the values that are in the miniature equations. Now I'm going to use my algebra skills to solve for x and y. For each miniature equation, I've multiplied by 2 to get rid of the denominator. And then I added or subtracted to get rid of the other values. So on the x side, I had to move a positive 2 over, so I subtracted. I got 6. For the y value, I had to move a positive 8 over, so I subtracted and got negative 10. And this x and y combined is what makes the second endpoint. And we got that visually with option 1 and algebraically with option 2. Okay, to finish things up, I want you to pick a method or try both for this final example. Okay, so what did you get for the second endpoint? Check out my work. If I'm working this with option 1, which is visually, I plotted O and N, counted out a horizontal distance of 4 and a vertical distance of 5. If you recreate that same horizontal and vertical distance, you'll find your second endpoint is at -1, +6. This is a very visual way to do it. If that way doesn't speak to you, you don't understand this graphing method, then try the algebraic method. First, I set up two equations. The x equation used the 3 from the midpoint and the 7 from the endpoint. Algebraically, I had to multiply by 2 and then subtract 7 to get a final x of -1. My y values used the 1 from the midpoint and the -4 from the endpoint. Again, I multiplied by 2, and then I added 4 to get a +6. So an x value of -1 and a y value of +6. You guys, I'm going to get the same answer both ways. If I get a different answer using both methods, then something went wrong somewhere, and I need to double check my work. This is a great visual method and also a great algebraic method, so I hope you can find something that works for you. Thank you.